And I'm delighted to say Happy New Year to Graham Hunter. Graham, how are you?
And the same to you. Well, grand, thanks.
Let's start by we were talking a little bit about Frank Lampard there. You obviously have followed that this period of his time at Chelsea. I think you might have done one of the very first interviews with Frank Lampard when he got the Chelsea gig. Was that here in Dublin, actually, if memory serves?
It was some beautiful, big, vastly expensive house hotel out in the country during their pre-season work. Yeah, you're right.
What's going wrong for him at the moment?
It's a giant question. The first thing to be completely clear about is that irrespective of all the other facets that need to be addressed at Chelsea, there's a team shorn of confidence and sharpness. I think as well that simply because people will jump on you, you can't ignore the fact that there are a handful of footballers in there who haven't played enough football together regularly in order to click. So there was a great deal made of the fact that yesterday was the first time that Ziyech and Pulisic had started in the same team this season. That's a factor, but equally, they were missing their best right back. Much as I adore Suarez, he didn't have a very good game. Werner is somebody who, when he was moving and Liverpool were interested, and it ended up that Chelsea outbid them, I contacted somebody I know very well on the technical staff there and said, listen, my point of view, because you know me by now, I've got a very pushy point of view, that he's not a top-class finisher. He's an extremely exciting attacker. He's extremely quick. But across the time I'd seen him playing club and international football, I'd seen exactly what he's doing right now, getting himself into positions without any kind of, not only without any clinical finish, but he's a guy who'll gorge on chances. So he's not somebody who'll feed off, he's 180 degrees different to, for example, Vardy, whose pace that he resembles, but whose ability to go, this is my chance, I'm taking it, goes away. When that happens, whether he plays left wide when Pulisic was out, or when he plays 9, as he did last night without Tammy Abraham, you know that any team, any functioning team where the end product doesn't come up, it starts to corrode those around you. It just does. Yesterday, for example, and I think you said what's wrong, so you weren't just talking about yesterday's performance. Again, death by a thousand cuts. Conte, particularly in the first half, for him, had a pretty atrocious game. And I didn't like the formation. I think with the players that he's got at his disposal, for Chelsea to play balanced football, it has to be 4-2-3-1. They went 4-2-3 yesterday. It didn't work. Kante was very, very leaky. And City played extraordinarily well. I thought they were absolutely fantastic. Now, I wouldn't be defensive of Chelsea or Lampard in any way, but if you don't analyse the way in which City... I mean, Pep very rarely purrs after a game. He's always, don't ask me this, or that's not the right take in it, or everybody's going to be very proud of us, all that kind of stuff, because he's a chippy man, I suppose. I recognise that factor. And he was saying that's us from 2 seasons ago. So, there was a real perfect storm yesterday. In terms of the run, do I think that there's perfect harmony at the club? No. Havertz is a very, very good footballer, but is he the right footballer for this Chelsea, for the Premier League, particularly at his stage of development in terms of how hard he wants to work? He's a very gifted footballer, but he's got a slightly also like attitude towards work. Was he a Lampard purchase? No, he wasn't. People at the club who do the buying, too, in particular, thought, here's a bargain, we have to take him, when that 80-something million needed to be spent on better defenders. So, look, I think they're in a blip. I know that the mood is just to categorise Lampard as not good enough and under threat, because Abramovich is a sacker. And I do think he's under a little bit of threat. It's not what I would do. I would definitely, without question, assess him towards the end of the season, were I in charge. But do I think he's under a little bit of threat? If I do, was there a slight reaching out from Chelsea to Pochettino before he sent for Paris Saint-Germain? Yes, there was. So I think there are a lot of small things that are wrong at the moment, and the microscope only being on Lampard as to whether he's, in quotes, good enough, or whether he's lost them, or has he got the level for this squad. This is a highly expensively assembled squad, and people are using that number against him to say, and therefore you should be third. I think that's a load of horse. It was quickly assembled. There are a lot of new footballers. There are a number of young footballers in there. And I think that all but the very best, very most experienced coaches, which Lampard is not, might be having similar difficulties right now to what Lampard is. But then, hey, I'm a voice of reason, Gerard. What places in the modern world for people like me?
It does seem, Graham, like Mauricio Pochettino has been the number one candidate for a number of potential vacancies for so long now that we don't know who to suggest as the new heir apparent to any throne that may come up in Stamford Bridge or Old Trafford or wherever it is. Does that help Frank Lampard a little bit, that you can't quickly point to somebody as an out-of-work manager who's got top-class Premier League experience?
And no, I buy your logic, Owen, and I have to tread carefully here. But it's my informed opinion that there have been discussions about Tuchel and about Maxi Allegri, both of whom are out of work. Are they? I try to combine here an educated opinion with little bits and pieces of news knowledge. And were Tuchel and Allegri not immediately available, I would buy your line, and I would extend it and say, I'm glad to say on that Lampard, by default, is probably going to be given at least 6 months, maybe another season. But my opinion is that the owner and the managing director do have their doubts. And the German and the Italian both have a high pedigree. And Chelsea is an environment where if you remove the arguments I made that perhaps Lampard is not struggling as badly as this recent run of results might portray, if you want to look at the micro, and if you set aside his status as club legend, and it was somebody else in there right now, then we'd all be saying, with Abramovich's not only tendency to sack, but Abramovich has been reinforced in his own beliefs, because regularly, when he has a snap turnover, when he reaches for somebody new, regularly it has worked. So I think with sadness that Frank Lampard is operating in an environment of risk at the moment, and I wish that he were given that he is so. He's still cutting his teeth in man management in terms of high-level tactics when a squad's not functioning particularly well, or not functioning at its best. I think it's fully legitimate that he'd be given minimum the end of the season. Is that a guarantee? No, I think that with Tuchel and Allegri available, there'll be people at Chelsea going, well, I wonder what we should do now. Should we move or shouldn't we move? And they did have a little tickle at Pochettino, but he's the PSG manager as of this weekend.
Can I ask you about Pep then? The purring. We've obviously very closely followed the cycles with which he has managed teams in the past, and the signing of the new deal that was publicly announced when it was it seemed like bucking the trend, and it seemed like it was him saying, okay, actually I'm changing the habits of a lifetime here. The team was obviously quite written off fairly early on in the season. People were laughing at their league position, and here they are having put a run together, the players coming into form, some of them coming back from injury, and you pointed out how happy he was after the game. To get this team back to win a league this season would rank with almost any of his achievements, right? Because and I know obviously they've got so much money and they've so many gifted players, but Liverpool are brilliant. Liverpool are the best team in Europe over the last 2.5 seasons. For this City team to beat that Liverpool team, that'd be sensational.
Yeah, I love your argument, and I think that's a fair point. Again, my perspective looking at it is that we live in such a rarefied atmosphere. Everybody watching a football this morning would understand that for each of us, and you have to expand that and think about the life that leading football people live. For each of us, life is a little bit harder at the moment. We feel restricted, we feel confused. Some of us feel threatened. Some of us are feeling pain because we've lost people. And you cannot divorce the sporting orbit from what we're all going through. And in my opinion, Manchester City were built as a thoroughbred derby winner type of football club. They were not a national grand national winner, which I think Liverpool are. And I think that it's been easier for a side constructed of the men that the squad provides at City and of the brand of football that Pep wants, and for the fact that, in my humble opinion, I think Guardiola is Sam Allardyce, who I've got really no time for. I talked about Cam 66, and I don't want to catch this. And Guardiola is somebody who kind of feels the pain of others. I don't want to sound too poncy here, but from knowing him, he's somebody for whom the world's events can weigh very heavily. And I wondered, like you, whether he and Manchester City, and also I agree with you, I was a little bit surprised that he renewed. I thought he was coming to a point where he was, I've done what I can and I need a rest. That wasn't the case. Good. Football is better with him active, wherever it is, whichever league it is. We're just a more enriched culture with more to look at and talk about with Guardiola active than without. But I thought that City and Guardiola together were the type of group who might be more buffeted by what's going on around them than Liverpool would. And therefore, to see them playing with such joie de vivre and confidence and first touch and playing as if they feel themselves to be absolutely untouchable. That was one performance. The run of performances up to then had become convincing, but not Excelsior. And that was. So now the test is, can they continue to do that? And drawing on your theme, if they can continue to play like this, and if they can reach that high point regularly, which I think they won't often find teams as slow to the first and second ball and so ragged systematically as Chelsea were yesterday. But it makes Manchester City number one in the Premier League. It makes them suddenly, again, decent candidates for the Champions League if they play like yesterday on a regular basis. It makes them very good opponents for Bayern Munich and Liverpool in the Champions League in terms of potential winners. So I find it an exciting development, and when any team plays like that, boy, it's why we all get so excited about our sport, isn't it?
100%. I did want to just very briefly, we've got our Deal or No Deal special coming up. Is Diego Costa, is he going to play football again? Is he worth talking to for any of these teams in the Premier League? Is he a spent force, or is it just needs the right arm around his shoulder?
He's such a muppet, isn't he? He's so unreliable. He's not a particularly good athlete anymore. In the right circumstances, the last game that he played for Atleti, he won by calling the referee for a penalty. He'll do things for you. He's a jack in the box, but he's such. Would I touch him with a barge pole? No. With other clubs, yes. Could he get on a little run where he signs for a club and he scores 8-9 goals between now and the summer? Yeah, that's quite feasible. But boy, I'd put one of those sort of skull and crossbones, do not go near marks on him if I was a transfer market director.
I think maybe some people are going to look at what happened with Suarez, who looked like he was at the end of being a high functioning.
Jared, don't compare them, please. Just in terms of ability, mentality, will to win, what Luis Suarez thinks his remaining months in football are meant to be for, what Diego Costa. They might be two South Americans, and they might both be a little bit streetwise in terms of malarkey that they'll get up to in order to make an impact on the pitch, but they are diametrically opposed in terms of their mentality, I promise you that.
Chippy Suarez, it turns out, is a very useful thing to have in your team.
What do you mean it turns out? It was blindingly obvious to everybody. It was inept by Football Club Barcelona to let him go the way that they did. Messi's hour-long interview that he gave last Sunday, a week past this Sunday, made it clear that he was disgusted that not only had his chum been sold or pushed out and paid up to go away, but Messi's principle, well, why did you give him to a rival? Suarez is now top scorer in Spain. It was evident. Two things were really evident. Three things were really evident. Number one, okay, he's a little bit rounder, and if you want to ask him to win sprints and play the long ball counter-attacking game, forget it, that's fine. The second thing that was patently obvious is that his wit and his ability to finish, his smartness around the area, absolutely was undiminished. And the third thing was he was a mean, hungry guy who, wherever he was, whether he stayed at Camp Nou, wherever he's gone, he was going to make an impact because he's determined to keep on winning. He is a fighter. It's like Glenn Close in whatever that Michael Douglas film.
Fatal Attraction.
You think you've got him under Fatal Attraction. You've got him under the Fatal Attraction is for people who think Costa should come in terms of title, but in terms you can't keep Glenn Close under the water in the bath. That's Luis Suarez. It doesn't turn out that stinkingly obvious. And Barcelona's president thought he'd smash Messi and Suarez as a couple and show them who was in charge. He told players, you'll never have to deal with Suarez again. Pumped Suarez out of the club and then did a runner himself. Well done, Bartomeu. Oh, top. Yeah, full respect for that, you clown.
It worked out pretty well for him, didn't it? Graham, good stuff.
How's it going so far? All right, lads.
See you. Happy New Year again. Cheers. That's Graham Hunter with us this morning at 8 here on OTB AM.